Welcome to Scaleforum 97, Britain's premier 4mm fine-scale model railway exhibition. Held at the Leatherhead Leisure Centre, Scaleforum once again attracted a superb collection of P4 layouts. This film takes the form of an imaginary journey around the 10 layouts on show at Scaleforum 97. We begin our journey at Hayling Island on the south coast of England. It's August bank holiday in the mid-50s, and day trippers are arriving. Children grasp buckets and spades, while mums and dads organise the luggage as Ray Woolgar collects tickets. Further down the track, a farmer reaps his harvest as a porter struggles with a grass fire caused by sparks. Back at the station, the engine whistles and runs round its train. Hayling Island comprises of a mainly flat plain between Selsey Peninsula and Portsea Island. The line first opened in January 1865, but soon closed due to mud erosion. A new route was constructed, and by July 1867, trains were once again running. Due to the weakness of the bridge from the mainland, the only locomotive allowed to cross was the Stroudley Terrier. Unlike most lines, the Hayling branch actually showed a running profit. However, this was insufficient to replace the aging bridge, and the last public trains ran on the 2nd of November, 1963. Little evidence now remains, and the track bed has been converted into a pleasant walk along the edge of Langston Harbour. Our next stop takes us eastward to Dorset and Thomas Hardy country. Flintcombe, set in the late 1930s, was built by the East Dorset Gang of Four. It takes its location from one of Hardy's most famous books, as Dickie Paget now explains.
Flintcombe is an imaginary location in Dorset. The name is derived from Thomas Hardy's novel, Tess of the D'Urbervilles. Tess spent some of her miserable life on a terrible farm at a place called Flintcombe Ash. We have taken the name from that. People think that Hardy had in mind the village of Plush in Dorset when he, as Hardy often did, make up imaginary names for real places. We therefore looked at the scenery around the Plush area. It's very much Dorset chalk. And we took some photographs of the area and of a lot of quarries in that area, chalk quarries. These photographs formed the basis for our scenic work. At one point in Hardy's novel, he explains that Tess needed to go from her home in North Dorset down to a dairy farm where she was going to get a job near Dorchester. she gets to Sturminster Newton, which Hardy calls Starcastle, and Hardy explains that she then had to wait for a carrier's van to take her down to Dorchester, because although this interior tract of country was engirdled by railways, no railway had ever crossed it. So one has to imagine that the Flintcombe layout is on a branch being built across in the direction of Dorchester. So as it runs from Hardy's Starcastle, or the real Sturminster Newton, it's almost certainly a branch of the Somerset and Dorset Joint Railway, because that was the railway in Hardy's time that ran through Sturminster Newton. Because our aim is to represent a Somerset and Dorset joint railway situation, all our locomotives are those that ran on the Somerset and Dorset in the 1930s, because this is our chosen period of modelling. Most of our rolling stock is appropriate to that area. It's not all perfect. We have several coaches under construction that are probably slightly more appropriate. But as with the rest of the layout, it develops as we go along. There are all kinds of ideas we have for generally improving it. But each stage has to be taken as a separate step with what time we have available for railway modelling.
We now head 140 miles north to Cheadle in Staffordshire, a small market town in the southeast of the Protteries. Cheadle Station is the terminus of a North Staffordshire Railway branch line, and the model is set in the period 1900 to 1928. Macclesfield Area Group member John Shirratt built the layout.
The branch line was unusual perhaps in two ways. First of all, there were several engineering difficulties encountered during its construction, and Cheadle was also known for having its own self-contained little coal field. So on the model you need to imagine that one of the larger pits in the area, which was New Hayden, is just to the left off the end of the scenic part. So you will see full coal trains and empty coal trains to and from the colliery running into the station to run round before turning out and going back down the branch to the main line. There were also several private, some quite small pits in and around Cheadle at the time in question, and coal from these collieries was in fact carted to the station and loaded up for transport onwards. So it's perhaps unusual for a branch station in having outward coal traffic rather than inward. There was also quite a lot of general freight traffic, and the passenger service was part of the main North Staffordshire Loop Line service. So for example, trains would run not just to the end of the branch at Creswell, but they would also probably run on to either Hanley, Tunstall, or possibly even Kidsgrove as part of the service, through the middle of the town. As far as the future layout is concerned, we are, toying with the idea of what to build. Plans are being made, but we haven't even decided whether to stick to end or go round and round yet, so it's all very nebulous. If we do another layout, it will probably, to be realistic, be another North Stafford one to, use the stock that we have, or, we're in the process of building, but you never know, it might end up being Midland, or it might even end up being BR, you never know, it's all still very much up in the air.
For our next location, we continue north to Yorkshire, and a very different type of model. Albion Street is John Shaw's second exhibition layout. Inspired by Ian Rice's Butley Mills, John has given it more of a local flavour by including buildings from the York area. The layout was originally built to OO standards. However, after joining the Scale4 Society, John decided to take the plunge and try P4. From the outset, John wanted this layout to be exhibited at eye level. This presents the public with a more realistic view and gives the opportunity to hide the fiddle yard behind the buildings, as opposed to a bridge or tunnel mouth. The buildings are made from at least 3 different materials. The white grain warehouse is made of 2mm card, coated with sealing emulsion and scribed to represent large blocks. The large brick warehouse is made of the same card, covered this time in brick plaster card. The goods shed is 1mm ply, covered in the same plastic card. The old pub and shop were made from double-skinned plaster card. The track is the Brook Smith type, fitted with C&L chairs. Only 1 in 4 sleepers are riveted. The others rely on the plastic chair being glued to the sleeper. It takes about an hour to shunt 2 short good trains, and with the relative sharpness of the curves and points, it makes a good test track. We continue our journey by heading northwest to the rugged North Yorkshire coast and Bramblewick. The period is 1895 to 1905, and the location is on the North Eastern Railway's Scarborough to Whitby line. Bramblewick is the brainchild of Tom Harland, who now takes up the story.
There are 6 of us that operate Bramblewick when we go to exhibitions, and they have had a very physical hand in making and building the layout. But I suppose that the initial idea was mine. It stemmed from an affinity that I have with a certain part of Yorkshire, and as a Yorkshireman I have a double affinity with that. It's based on Robin's Bay, which is on the northeast coast of Yorkshire. We've given it a fictitious title, which I borrowed from the author Leo Walmsley, and he called his fictitious village Bramblewick, which I suppose is a kind of Yorkshire name, and we've used the same, but we've added NER after it so that people understand that it is part of the North Eastern Railway system. It's on the line between Scarborough and Whitby, and Bramblewick, or Robin's Bay, the station's still there, it still exists. It sits in a very, very picturesque part of the world, and the idea behind the layout was to really try and recreate a section of the line running through this very picturesque part of the world. Unfortunately, you can look across and you have the North Sea at one side, so it makes a painting back scene a much easier proposition. And one of the things that people, I suppose, that have seen the layout have made comments about is in fact the back scene and how well it works and how it gives a greater dimension or added depth, because it is quite a narrow layout. At its maximum width it's only 24 inches. So seeing it with a back scene which is in effect the North Sea with a few cliffs here and there gives the illusion that it is much wider. And my interest, because I'm an artist, my profession for the last 25 years has been a painter, I'm interested in aesthetic things, and the aesthetic qualities that the layout has to offer are my main interests. I'm not an engineer, but I've learned a few things about model railways and building them, and having been responsible for actually making the layout from baseboard legs right through to the scenic side and the buildings and everything else. My interest really lies in the aesthetic side. So I've tried over the last 14 years to put this together and recreate a section of countryside, atmosphere, the railway around about the turn of the century, but we've got a bit of leeway of 10 years, so it's kind of 1895 to 1905. So hopefully that message gets across to people. And judging by the comments we've had here at Scaleforum this weekend, most people like the concept. They like the colour of the layout, they like the way everything's put together that will create this overall illusion, because that's what it is. The same with the painting, it's just an illusion. For me it's doubly nice to do something like this, because I'm used to working in 2 dimensions and creating a 3-dimensional feeling, whereas this, you can create something, pick it up and move it and look at it, which is very pleasant, and I enjoy buildings. The other aspect that people kind of home in on, or the spectators look at, are the buildings, and I'm asked time and time and time again, and I probably will have to write a little book about this, how the stonework is reproduced. I'm not going to talk about it now, but that's one of the things that pleases me immensely, because I feel that the way it's been put together, and the way I've discovered of doing this, which is a very simple process of carving polyfiller and painting it, but it does look very representative of North Yorkshire sandstone. And again, the spectators seem to have picked this up and asked this over and over again. It seems to be working quite well this weekend. We had a few problems yesterday, but the gremlins are always there, I think. But hoping that it will continue, and we've had a lot of invitations from people, and 1 or 2 we've accepted, so hopefully you'll see Bramblewick out again in this part of the world next year, possibly.
Our next stop takes us forward in time to 1958 and south to Cambridgeshire and to Pampisford Station on the Ode Stour Valley line. Adrian Brady, the coordinator of the Cambridge Area Scale 4 group, explains the background of this prototype layout.
The model of Pampisford, which we're exhibiting this weekend, is a prototype model of a station that was situated on the Cambridge to Colchester line. It wasn't a particularly large station, didn't serve a very large population, and for the purposes of the model has been made into a block section station. This wasn't actually true in the prototype, but for modelling interest in train operation, it was felt necessary that we did this, and we're hoping to show a representative selection of trains from the 50s and the 60s, which was obviously in the British Railways era, and of a time that most of the members of the group can either remember, or for the younger ones can relate to. It was a cross-country line from Cambridge to Colchester, and there were not that many local passenger trains throughout the day, and they weren't particularly well served. So as far as stock was concerned, it tended to be rather ageing second-hand stock that was virtually on its last legs for a majority of the time, and so too was the case with the locomotives. Quite a lot of the locomotives were ageing ex-Great Eastern and other constituent company locos. We also feature a few diesel locomotives from the mid to late 50s and the early 60s, when quite a few of the class were in their infancy, and prototype machines, which added quite a variety at the time, remembering them, to the railway scene. So hopefully we've tried to represent in the model a good cross-section of railway operation for this particular line. This particular section of the Cambridge to Colchester line was also subject to diversion traffic from Cambridge to Liverpool Street via Bartlow Junction, Saffron Walden and Audley End, when the Littlebury Tunnel was under repair, or if there was some reason that the main line couldn't be used. So once in a while there was quite a good excuse for running some unusual trains.
Leaving Cambridgeshire, we now head southwest and into Middlesex, where Brockley Hill is situated. Tony Osmond is the present owner of this branch line terminus layout.
The layout is basically about its third ownership. It is quite an old layout. It was originally owned by Ian Pewters as a North British layout. We in turn converted it, but into Brockley Hill was the name. Andy Farquharson had it, I think, second time round, and he had a big lake at the end where you see the carriage shed. And we didn't like that very much, or John Redrup at the time didn't like that very much, so we decided to fill it in with 1,000 tonnes of ballast, or hardcore if you like. So we put in a little goods spur and also a carriage shed just to make it that bit more interesting. But we saw Ian Pewters is here today at the show, and the goods line says he only went up to the level crossing gates, and that's as far as it went. And I think the track plan has changed quite a lot. The rolling stock is basically all kit built. Some of the locomotives are quite old, in fact, because two of the LNWR locomotives, or all the three of the LNWR locomotives, ran on London Road, which was a P4 project we did a number of years ago, which I sort of got half involved in. I didn't do that much work on it, but I helped a little bit, and I was one of the operators there. All the carriage stock you see, which is only the 3 coaches, run on London Road as well, albeit in a much longer train. The goods wagons, no, nothing run on London Road or the goods wagons, so that's purely associated with this layout. The North London loco, which you've seen, used to run on London Road with a rake of 10 North London coaches, close couple coaches on the back of it. So it's having light duties today, if you like to call it, just pulling the goods wagon, half a dozen goods wagons behind it.
We now cross London and head towards the sea again, to arrive at Laysdown. Laysdown was the terminus of the Sheppey Light Railway, a line engineered by the well-known Colonel Holman F. Stevens. Wheeldon Scaleforum Group member Keith Harcourt is our guide.
Laysdown is a model by members of the Uckfield Model Railway Club, of whom I am one. And also we are the Wheeldon area group of the Scaleforum Society. It's an absolutely prototypical layout, chosen because it's one of the few stations that you can actually model in 4mm scale without compressing it at all. So what you see is actually what the SECR took over, and it's modelled in around about 1930. The layout's almost finished. We're lacking a loading gauge and a couple of signals and odd bits, but it's very nearly finished. The road at the right-hand end of the layout also has to have pavements and things put in, but apart from that, it is complete. The whole of the layout is very much a club effort. You know, our club has models from 2mm scale to 7¼ inch gauge live steam, and people from all of those disciplines have actually been engaged in it at one stage or another. We also tend to use and reuse items from other layouts. So for example, the lighting on this layout is common to the club's O-gauge layout, Kennet. And the back scene is probably one of the different things about the layout. We developed it around about 6 years ago initially for my own layout at home, and then we produced a 32-foot long continuous backcloth for Kennet, our O-gauge layout. So when we came to do this one, we used exactly the same method. It's essentially a commercial sky paper, which, because the clouds don't look very realistic in our view, what we do is to pin it up on the wall, and using automobile primer, white primer, we glaze it, if you like, to soften the edges of all the clouds and make it look like a distant view. The individual structures are all hand built. We're lucky that one of our number is an architect, and he did the station and the cattle dock, and someone else did the water tower. But it's got that wide open, spacious feel, simply and solely because what you see there is what it was there in those days. We added 3 trees to mask the entry into the fiddle yard, but apart from that, it's all from photographic evidence, plans and maps.
Travelling southwest again, we pass through the Kent countryside of the 1930s to our next stop at Wadhurst on the South Eastern Railway. This layout is the first venture into P4 modelling by the Epsom and Ewell Model Railway Club. Club member Leslie Chadwick tells the story behind the layout, which is presented at Scaleforum very much as a layout under construction.
Yeah, the model was started about 12 years ago as a club project, but it has taken a long time due to various technical problems, and it is now running in this is its first exhibition. It was the wiring is not finished, so it doesn't run completely as yet, but enough to exhibit it. As you can see, it's a model of Wadhurst Station in Sussex. It is nearly virtually scale. There's obviously a lot of building work to go on. You can see by the display in the background what the overall effect is going to be. For this exhibition, we are running any stock because we haven't built enough true prototypical restriction naught stock, so anything goes at the moment. The line itself was the Tunbridge Hastings line, and the reason probably it's never been modelled before is because all the stock is special restriction naught stock, because when they built the line they ruined the tunnel. They didn't build it wide enough, and so all the stock has to be specially narrow stock, and until very recently nobody actually made any kit, so it was all scratch building, which is probably why no one else was stupid enough to attempt to build it, because you couldn't buy the stuff out of a packet off the shelf and make it. So this has obviously hindered progress, and we've got a lot of carriage stock to build, but fortunately they do now make a kit, so we are, we're in the beginnings of making rolling stock. Similarly with locomotives, it is also very restricted. We've got their only particular prototypes.
We end our imaginary journey back in the present day, some 80 miles along the south coast from where we began. Meandering through the vivid greens of the Sussex countryside runs the Beckley tramway, or it would have done so had this beautiful 8-mile light railway from Rye to Northiam ever existed in reality. The design has been influenced by Colonel Stevens and the South Eastern and Chatham Railway. The line fell into disrepair during the Second World War, and like many other similar lines, was subsequently closed. The Rye to Four Oaks section of the tramway has since been reopened by a preservation group, and the layout depicts Four Oaks Station as it would look today. The landscape foundations are plywood and carved formers, with net curtain material stretched over the top and then plastered. Inspiration for much of the scenery, especially the buildings, comes from the Rye and Camber tramway. The majority of stock at Four Oaks has been built by Paul Tasker. Older items are slowly being phased out and replaced with etched kits. Paul finds these more enjoyable to put together and considers they give a better looking end product. Smith's couplings are almost universally used, as is a top coat of varnish applied with a 20-year-old bottom-of-the-range airbrush. The locos and coaches have been painted by Bob Freed of Canterbury. But Scaleforum is not just about layouts. Over 40 specialist manufacturers and retailers were present, together with the Society's own Bring and Buy stall. Expert lecturers and top demonstrators were also on hand, offering assistance and sharing methods, techniques and ideas to both expert and novice. Scaleforum also gives both visitor and exhibitor the chance to meet and talk in a friendly and welcoming atmosphere. Over the weekend, the Society runs competitions for both novice and the more experienced modeller. Awards are also given for the best layouts at the show. Each year, the standard of fine-scale model railways on show at Scaleforum continues to improve. To create these three-dimensional works of art requires skill, endless patience, and a true love of the subject. And it is these talents, together with the dedication and the sheer enthusiasm of the Scale 4 Society, that combine to make Scaleforum such a marvelous exhibition, the finest model railway exhibition of the year.